Hello friends! I have a little test I'm going to be doing and I figured I would take you guys along on the journey with me. We have this ancient epoxy resin, the kind used for casting little gems. It's two parts. I assume it's a 1-to-1 ratio. These containers are several years old and they've been living in our basement shop. We brought them to the new shop last year, so I'm guessing they're not good anymore, but I want to find out before I throw them away. The thought is we might be using this stuff to cast a gem for our Steven Universe sword we're working on. The gem's going to go in this spot right here, so it's a small little gem. I think it's a good example for epoxy casting since this stuff usually takes quite a while to cure. It has a lot of time for the bubbles to come out, unlike the urethane resin casting that we do where the resin cures pretty fast and the bubbles get trapped in there. So there's two things I want to test. One, is this stuff even usable? And two, does it take long enough to cure so that the bubbles get out if it does actually work? I think these little tints came with the kit, so there's a little bit of a red in there. I think I'm looking for a pink gem, so I might just put a tiny bit of red tint in there just to see how it looks. Maybe some little sparkles or something, but I am suspecting that this may not even cure at all. But let's find out. I shook up the containers and poured out equal parts of A and B, and it looks like they're about the same viscosity, so it probably doesn't matter too much which side I put the tint in. It does look like it's going to have an amber kind of hue to it since the part B has a little bit of color to it, so this won't be perfectly clear. It'll have a little yellow in it. If I'm going to be making pink, that should be fine. Got a little bit of the red I'm going to add in there. Boop, boop. It's always good if you're adding color to pre-mix it in one of the sides, usually the more viscous side that's harder to mix, so that way you don't have uneven colors in the finished product, unless that's what you're going for. Or we got a bit of a magenta looking finish there. Oh, I gotta get some sparkles. I have this Cast Magic Pearly Blue, which is very fine pearlescent sparkles, so it gives it more of a shimmery look than giant glitter bits. And this stuff is compatible with resins that get up to higher temperatures, so these won't like dissolve like normal glitter can with high temperatures. So it should stay all sparkly. And of course the glitter gets everywhere. If you're wondering why our glitter-free sign never changes to 1-day glitter-free, it's because we keep doing projects like this. Same with the tint. I like to mix in the powder before I mix part A and part B, just so the clock doesn't start ticking. That looks pretty cool. My worry with the powders is that they might sink to the bottom since this stuff is going to take longer to cure, but hopefully these finer powders will stay suspended, unlike something with bigger chunks. This little mold was made off of kind of a smooth looking knob, just a little greebly, so that we can cast resin copies whenever we have extra resin. So this is what I'm going to be making my test gem out of to see if this stuff is even still good to use. So I have my part A and part B. I'm just gonna pour one into the other, and with epoxies, you usually want to mix more than you need if you're working with small amounts like gems, because if it's not mixed well enough, it will stay tacky and gummy forever. It seems to be a lot more temperamental than working with urethane resins, at least the ones we're familiar with. So I want to make sure I mix it thoroughly, that I scrape the sides, that I scrape the bottom, and then I'm going to pour this into a completely different container so that the little crevices aren't just pure one side of resin. This has already been mixed, so that way there won't be any uncured parts on the sides or the bottom that will get poured into the mold. These are the kind of precautions I take when I use like the Epsilon Pro or the XTC 3D epoxies from Smooth On, just because they seem to be more temperamental about mixing. You really have to make sure you follow the directions exactly, make sure that the temperature's about where it's supposed to be, that especially that it's not too cold. It might not cure if it's too cold. With that kind of amber side added, this is the color we got, so it's still pretty magenta. It's got a blue shimmer to it since I used the pearly blue. It was either that or pearly green, those are the two I had. And now I can just pour it in there and hope the bubbles leave before it cures. I think I'm supposed to leave it for overnight, so I'll do that, and then we'll check on it tomorrow. It is the next day, almost 24 hours later, and a good sign, this is not tacky anymore. So that's something. Same with this, it seems like it actually cured. Let me take the extra bit out of here. Oh, that looks really pretty. It's got a bunch of the paper on it, but all of that could be sanded off, but this was just a little extra test. But that seems to be cured. That's really impressive for this being older stuff.
Mm-hmm. Can I see? Oh, it's so sparkly.
Looks like a gumdrop.
I bet it would look really cool all glossy, like the top of it there.
Yeah, the bottom looks the prettiest because it wasn't touching anything. This is all as glossy as the surface finish is in here, and it looks like it's like a satin finish. But that sure is pretty. And more importantly, it seems like it actually cured, which is really impressive because resins tend to not have a very long shelf life, and this stuff is, geez, Bill, how many years old would that be?
3 or 4 probably.
3 or 4. And it still works. So I won't be throwing this stuff out, and we may be using this stuff in our Steven Universe project. We'll see how it goes.
Hey there, friends. Got a fun little shop project for you today. It's my Critter spray gun, and I'm taking it apart. This has gotten a lot of use over the years, and it still works great. I recently used it to spray Mod Podge on my impact armor. Just taking this wacky nut off. This tube here, this is the tube that paint or whatever gets pulled through and then sprayed out the top. And it's aluminum, which is basically shiny wood. It's not very resistant to wear and tear. This is the nozzle that gets screwed on there, like that. And it threads on to here. Now the end of this, over the years of like adjusting this on there, there's a spring that goes in there too. But anyway, this brass part is a lot harder than the aluminum, and it has really goofed up the thread. So this doesn't even really thread on there. I can just pull it right off. So that needed to be replaced or fixed. It's also really stuck on there. There's probably a bunch of Mod Podge in there. But anyway, this tube needed to be replaced. And they do sell a replacement kit with all new bits and everything, but I really just needed this tube. The replacement kit was like 20 bucks. Not the end of the world, but I thought I could do better by making my own. Once that nut's off, this thing just slides out, or screws out the bottom. There we go. So yeah, we can clearly see the end of that is pretty chewed up. Now, to figure out what that thread is, I have these thread checkers. This one is metric, and I tried all these, it's not that. So I went to my Imperial one, and sure enough, it's a 1/4 inch. There's 1/4 20, very common, it's not that. There's 1/4 28, less common, it's also not that. It's actually 1/4 32. Very uncommon thread, and I think it's got that high of a thread pitch so that when you're adjusting this, you have a lot of control. So anyway, I figured I'll make my own, but I don't have a 1/4 32 die for cutting threads, so I bought one on Amazon for $11. So I didn't get the replacement kit for 20, but for less of the price, I can fix mine, and I have this forever. The only downside is I don't have a handle to hold this. This is a different size than all my other ones. So I'm going to try and carefully use this pair of channel locks or vice grips or whatever. Carefully, these are hardened steel, so I don't want them to crack. I just want to make sure I can get a good grip on there and not have it slip. And then for the tube, I thought I'll go buy an aluminum tube and modify that, but Brittany said, hey, why don't you just tap the other end? And I said, that's why I married you, because you're a smart lady. So I'm gonna chuck this up in my little vise here and give it a try. Actually, I'm gonna go to the belt sander and put a chamfer on the end of this and go get some cutting oil to help out. And then I will try and put a thread on it. Okay, just sanded a little chamfer on there, and I can put a little bit of oil, probably not necessary with aluminum, but better safe than sorry. And hopefully I don't whack the camera with this. I need to move the camera. There we go. And then this is not ideal. I fully appreciate that. So I'm just going to try and be as careful and tedious as possible. But again, this is steel cutting aluminum, so it shouldn't really be that much of a problem. I just want to make sure I get it started well, and then it should keep itself going. Yeah, whoop, need to tighten my vise. And then just do a little bit of a turn, and then I back it off to cut the chips, and then I keep going. This definitely doesn't look like it's going on straight, but maybe that's just the pliers twisting a little bit. So yeah, it's just this for a while. That thread goes a good inch or so, so I'm gonna keep this going. Anyway, I'll check in with you in just a couple minutes. I think that should do it. It's not the cleanest. It's not too bad. Should be able to just spin this right off. And we're clear. Okay, and then this nozzle should fit right on there, and it does. Awesome. So I should be able to reinstall this in my critter. Actually, I need to make sure that this protrudes the same amount. Let's see, the previous one threads were about 7/8 of an inch down, and this one is about the same, so it should be good. The main thing is if the bottom of this tube is too high, then there's going to be a bit of liquid in the bottom that you can never reach. So you want it to be as close as possible, but if it's touching the bottom, then you can't get liquid to go into it. So the height does matter quite a bit. This goes on next. In this episode of the vlog, Bill turns a lot of nuts. Okay, spring on top of that, and then nozzle, which threads immediately and then goes all the way down. Now I have a ton of control over the height of that nozzle, which is fantastic. And then this hopefully should work just fine next time I have to spray something. So yeah, saved myself a little bit of money, and now I have the ability to make these whenever I want. Of course, I've had this thing for like 5 years, so I'll probably crack this out in another 5 and be really happy at myself for having thought ahead. Never regret buying tools. One of the benefits of living in Seattle is being near other people like Joel and Sean.
Hey!
They swung by the shop today to show off a really cool 3D printed Nerf blaster.
That's right, Nerf blaster. May I?
You may. It's fully 3D printed, and it is devastating. It shoots crazy fast. It can empty the whole thing, this whole thing, in less than a second.
Less than a second. This is an FDL3 from Project FDL. FDL like foam dart launcher. Wonderful company out of Atlanta.
All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I was just there.
Yes, you.
Anyway, we should shoot it.
We should.
Actually, I think Everett
It's Everett's turn.
should shoot at stuff. We're hiding behind the mannequin. It's fine.
Just aim for the tap plastics.
You handed me a weapon and it stood in front of me. Alright. I'm gonna attempt to aim, I guess. Amazing.
The sound it makes when it hits that door is terrifying.
It's great.
Yeah.
Now for something completely different. Time for a tool story. I want to tell you about my bandsaw, or one of my bandsaws. I own 3 bandsaws. This is the larger 14-inch. I have it set up for woodworking. It says it's a wood cutting bandsaw, but you can cut anything on this. This is the biggest one I have. I have a horizontal bandsaw for cutting metal usually, and then I have the smaller bandsaw I use for usually cutting foam, but it's got a metal cutting blade on it. This is Jabba the Cut. This is an NIC, I don't know what the brand is, well, made in Taiwan. In 1982, the same year I was made. And I acquired this from my friend Chris. Now, Chris was a Seattle native until he moved to New Zealand with his girlfriend Cassie. The two of them started working at Weta Workshop, 2 of the nicest, coolest people I know. But they were leaving, and Chris had this bandsaw. And he sold it to me for $75, which was a bargain. It's not the best bandsaw in the world, but it has worked flawlessly for the last few years. I did have to replace the rubber on the wheels and some of the bearings. I basically gave it a bit of a tune-up, but it works really great. Now the name Jabba the Cut comes from my friend Will Morgan. He used to live up here in Seattle. He has since moved back down to LA to work on TV shows. But Will was working out of my shop for a while, and when we got this bandsaw, this giant green bandsaw, he came up with the name Jabba the Cut. and I made the vinyl sticker for it, and it has stuck. This bandsaw is fantastic. I have no reason to ever get rid of it. It seems to work really great. The price was right, and it goes to show if you keep an eye out, you can get a really great tool like this for a pretty fair price, and it will last you for years. Anyway, this is the newest edition of Tool Stories with Bill. I hope you enjoy it. That's going to do it for the vlog this week. We are just wrapping up the rose quartz sword, so there will be an extra credit video for you in just a few days showing that, and then that project video comes out next week. It's looking really shiny, and I can't wait to share it with you. I'm just working on the book some more, so got my studio set up there, and I'm still just taking tons more photos for the new book. That's most of what we've been up to in the shop this week, along with having shenanigans with Joel and Everett hanging out in the shop as well. It's been a really fantastic, super productive week. And thanks so much for hanging out, and as always, thanks so much for the support. That'll do it, and I'll see you guys in just a few days when I get to show off that really cool rose quartz sword.